The following program is produced by Londonderry residents. The views and opinions expressed are not necessarily the views and opinions of the LACTV staff or its volunteers, and should not be considered an endorsement by CTV 20 or its staff and volunteers.
Welcome, Londonderry, to another edition of Concord Conversations, where we talk about local, county, and state business. We always have guests here that can answer questions and talk about what's going on. And today, we're privileged to have Superintendent Dan Black from the Londonderry School District and School Board Chair Bob Slater with us. Welcome. And we have Representative Wayne McDonald as one of our co-hosts. Before we get to the meat of what we're doing here today, I just want to send out congratulations to the Londonderry High School softball team for winning the state championship in very convincing fashion. Well done, and that just goes to show the type of people we have here that play and coach our sports in Londonderry. So congratulations to that team. With that being said, I think my first question would be to Bob, sure. As well, being the chair of the school board. The school budget is always the biggest issue here in town, and I'm sure, tell us a little bit about the process, because to a lot of people, we see a dramatic decrease in the enrollment in town, quite a dramatic decrease, and although state funding portions are up a little bit, but so is the budget. And we seem to be increasing the budget quite a lot each year, even though our enrollment is going down. So can you speak to that and tell us just how does that work? What's the process going on there? And what can you tell the people as to why taxes in town are pretty high and the school budget has to survive? So what's the process? What happens there?
Well, thank you, Doug and Wayne, for having us here today. The process is pretty detailed. The superintendent will sit down with his staff and come up with, and it all starts with personnel. What do we need? Where are we at? And that's where the budget starts, which we all know it's between 79 and 81% of the budget is personnel. So the superintendent has to look at the enrollment, has to look at class choices, high school level through kindergarten. He will then go through that, then they'll go through all the other essentials to run the school district and present this to us over 3 or 4 meetings. It takes usually personnel, and the superintendent lays everything out on the first night when he presents the budget to the school board. Then we will do so many departments over the next few meetings, along with the budget committee as well, so questions can be asked on behalf of the school board, as well as the budget committee, as well as the community members. So as the superintendent presents, and then each department head comes in and presents theirs, we can ask our share of questions, budget committee and community. As to the budget going up year after year, enrollment's a tough thing to do. You can take the high school where there's, the scheduling is probably the toughest to figure out with all the class choices and electives and that, to be able to process. You can take 100 kids out of the high school, but it may not change. You may be taking 15 from the freshman class, or 30 from the sophomore class, so on and so forth. It may be 2 kids in this class, or this elective, 3 in this class, so it may not change the way the school operates. If you took 100 kids out of first grade in Matthew Thornton, it could make a difference. But where we have 3 elementaries, we have a large middle school, everybody says declining. Yes, the superintendent looks at personnel at that point. Mm-hmm. And he has made some significant changes regarding enrollment, and that's what affects the budget, the 80% of the budget. So when the superintendent presents it to us, now we go through our meetings and ask our questions along with that, and then the department heads. But The budget, I will say, since Dan has taken over the superintendent spot now, 2 years ago, the budget went up 1.9%. Lowest in a long time, and last year was 2.6%. Inflation was well over 3%. So as far as making adjustments, the superintendent laid out a plan with eliminating some positions due to enrollment, and it's done that way every year. And I believe the past couple of years have been upwards of 14 positions, 14 or 15 positions that have been through retirement, and that is basically how we try to do it. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you have to eliminate a class or an elective, and we have to make that change that way, but it's usually through attrition, and that's the way we like to do it. But I think over the last 2 years, the superintendent has brought forth a budget that has been outstanding, for the taxpayers, a way to run the school district efficiently. Has made our job as a school board easier because we see it. It's laid out for us over meetings, and it's explained very well of why these changes are needed and how we can save some funds and still invest into better curriculum. And we this year we've into we bought curriculum for K through 5 for reading, a new curriculum and that. So these are areas that we're putting it back into the education where we're able to save in other ends and still reduce the budget.
Another thing is Londonderry School System's always had an excellent reputation, in terms of graduates and in terms of administration, in terms of curricula, everything. And, it's a competitive job market out there. So to the extent that people are concerned about high salaries, you got to pay good people if you want good results.
Mm-hmm.
So,
For sure.
But I would imagine that's part of the process, part of the factor too, one of the factors.
So if you look at the details of last year's budget, we did reduce 9 overall staff positions, and that was due to lower enrollment. So that's where we were able to bring down the costs. And we focused, as Bob said, 2 low growth budgets year after year for the last 2 years. Some of the drivers we saw where things are increasing is, 2 years ago, the community supported a bond for $5 million to help update our buildings. So our old buildings do increase our costs. Healthcare went up about 5% last year, but when we compared ourselves to other districts, we were in a great shape because a lot of districts saw 20-25% increases. So we were still good. So we had a low growth budget, and a lot of the drivers of the budget is you are paying for the people to work with the kids. The kids drive the costs indirectly. It's the people that you're funding to work with the kids.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier, Dan, about how we compare with other school districts around the state like Bedford, Merrimack, and Salem.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that a little bit so people understand it's apples for apples, and we're not out of line.
Yeah. Every year with our annual report and some of our budget books, what we do is we publish everyone's average cost, and we're in line with the bigger districts around the state, the Division I districts. Last year was the first time that we were less expensive overall than Bedford, so I think that was a good thing when we went through the budget process. But we're always keeping an eye on that. We're making sure that we're in line with the region and the state, and making sure we don't get out of whack as well.
Great, excellent.
I'd like to turn the next question to something that I read recently involving your policy change on transporting kids in school buses and drivers. Could you talk a little bit about what precipitated the change from the old policy? Because if I read that correctly, I think a reference was made to an obsolete policy, and you've updated it. So could you speak on that and how it happened?
Sure. With the school board's leadership and support, we've been looking through all of our policies. And basically, there's just a number of policies that we've had on the books for years that are out of date legally. How we operate, we're not out of date legally. We follow the law, but that was a good example of one we were just trying to update to the law and make sure that what we do already is just articulated in the policy, because we answer to the people and we answer to the school board. We wanted to make sure that it was up to date.
Yeah. And a lot of our policies, some went back to '78 in our policies. So we have, over the last 2 years, district office has brought forward a lot of these policies. You'll see 20 to 30 being looked at, and a lot of it's through the School Board Association or just updates. Nothing has really changed. There have been some updates in bullying and substance abuse and that as years have gone by, and with the district office going through this and presenting it to us and the school board reviewing it and asking for some of these changes, we just want to be at the most current. and update the entire policy and procedures area so we are at the most current, especially with the way times have changed and other issues have come up over the past several years. A lot of years there was nothing looked at unless one individual brought it up. So as a school board, we all felt working with the superintendent and their staff to get our policies and procedures updated from 1978, 85, 83, 89, whatever it may be, to the current. As far as the school bus policy, that is something that we still required, but we needed it in legal form, through our policies and procedures. And now we've got every school board meeting, we're reviewing upwards of 5 to 10 policies and trying to get to the most current. I don't know why it took this long, but this school board and leadership want to get to the most current and stay that way moving forward.
So 4 or 5 years ago, we would only really update a policy when a problem came up.
Correct.
Probably not the best place for us to be in. So I think what we've done over the last 2 years, as Bob was saying, is let's be proactive. Let's look at the laws that have changed, make sure we're acting in legal ways, and then also update the policies too. So we're no longer reactive, we're trying to be proactive.
Right. You mentioned bullying. I'd like to get to that a little bit later on. The question I have right now in regards to your new policy is that, the state is debating this, and personally, I'm against it. But if the state were to legalize cannabis recreationally, how would that affect your job pool for people that you have to hire to transport kids and so forth and so on?
Yeah.
Because I understand right now it's already difficult finding bus drivers in this job market. So how much more difficult would that make your job?
That's a good question,
Yeah.
Doug. But the drivers go under the Department of Transportation. They have to pass their drug test and that, so it all depends what the state does at that level. In the workforce, that's another with the Department of Employment. So a lot of this is going to hinge on what happens is DOT regulations is, there's driver tests every 2 years and you have to have a physical. There's a background check through DOT, through the bus company, as well as us in-house. So that's going to be a big hinge on how that goes forward. That's kind of out of our control. We will then see what they do, and then we can set our own policy, working with School Board Association and our lawyers to make sure it doesn't become an issue, but there's got to be some guidelines and definitely installed if that does happen.
For sure, because as far as I know right now, there's no good test for people that may have been smoking, say, marijuana, which is one of the issues we have. And so from a school point of view, that makes it even worse, because a bus driver, as an example, could pass the DOT test. Maybe last month he got tested, he's fine. But what he does the previous night, you don't know.
Yeah.
And you can't tell unless something happens.
And then Bob brings up a good point. So there's what the state does and what we could do locally too could be different, where we could be more restrictive, because we always want safe people to be with our kids.
That's right.
I think that speaks to the overall management of the school district and how challenging it is to manage a school district this large. I actually grew up in Londonderry, born in Derry, but I grew up in Londonderry. I tell students when they come to the State House, for a tour, the fourth graders, especially if they're from Matthew Thornton. I graduated from Matthew Thornton, and I won't say what year, but it was a long time ago. It was called Londonderry Central School back then, and it was changed during the bicentennial to Matthew Thornton because he was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, and he was from this area. And that was the only school in Londonderry at the time. Then they built the North School just before I graduated, and now we have, 6 schools, right? And managing, given the explosive growth of Londonderry being right off 93, right, in southern New Hampshire, which, Merrimack Valley, all that good stuff, managing the overall school district and the many challenges, whether it's the potential of cannabis coming in or anything else, it's, certainly during COVID, you must have had more than your share of challenges. And I don't know if you want to speak to that, any of the general challenges of the size of the district itself, or?
Yeah, no, and I think where the school board and I are at is we have to hire good people.
Right.
We have great principals, we have great teachers. That usually takes care of most of your problems if you hire good people. I think some of the things that's getting harder and harder for us to control are more societal issues, like mental health. We are not mental health experts, but we're constantly kind of put in that world because any problem that's in the community makes it inside of our buildings, and I think those are some of the things that I think we're challenged with more, where, someone becomes a teacher, they know how to teach. Maybe they don't know how to deal with mental health issues when they see them. So I think those are some of the things that we think about more too.
Most of your teachers pretty experienced. I mean, it's not like their first job usually. They're pretty seasoned.
We have a range. So I'd say a lot of our teachers have a master's degree, which is great, more than 70%. So that's how we know they're good.
More than 70% throughout the entire school system?
Yeah,
wow.
Exactly.
Okay.
But we will get first-year teachers starting, and we have a whole bunch of mid-career and veteran teachers as well. So we have a pretty good distribution.
Yeah.
What you wanted to say?
I was going to say that's a good point, because it brings to mind a perception, right or wrong, of the fact that teachers nowadays, they need to know a lot more than just teaching the subject.
Yep.
Sure do.
And I know that in my opinion, I wonder, are the students getting the instruction on basics, the reading, writing, arithmetic, if you will, that they need, because a lot of the teachers' time is taken up with a lot of peripheral things that are being mandated, not necessarily by the state or the school board, but by federal as well, that really takes time away from the teacher's ability, and they don't have time to harp on any one subject. If you don't get it, you don't get it, and maybe you get instructed some other time. But sometimes I get the feeling that they're skipping curriculum because they don't have time for it, because they teach all this extra stuff. I see that as a potential problem in the future of our kids knowing what they need to know to operate in this world. Because I know in my time, we talk about bullying. Back in my day, and we can't do it now, of course. Back in my day, you went out in the playground and you solved your bullying problem. That doesn't happen nowadays. You can't happen nowadays that way. But the fact that we're putting more and more, it seems like every year there's more that the teachers have to either be careful about or teach students about something. It's not good, I don't think. And so how do you approach that? How are the teachers cope with that? Have you heard complaints from them?
I think all of our teachers would say is, like, there's lots of mandates out there and it's hard to always focus. So we've definitely taken the approach over the last 5 years to make sure we focus. So back in 2017, we put in our new math program. That is just the basics, just the foundations, so that by the time kids are in 8th or 9th grade, they can take algebra, to make it as simple as possible. We're starting to really see those effects positively in terms of where our kids are going. We had some really good stuff this March, and we'll share some stuff next month around how we're doing in math. And then we just went through the same process with literature and reading and writing. So we've shifted back to teaching phonics, which most of America shifted away from in the 80s and 90s. So we've shifted back to that, and now, as Bob said earlier, we have a new literacy program going into our schools, in the elementary schools next year, to get to the basics. Then you get all the mandates, and that's where it gets hard. We have to find time, and there's always limited time. So I do feel that our teachers can be stressed about that, and we do our best to kind of really focus on what's most important, and then we'll find a way to figure things out after that.
Are most of the mandates state-based or federally mandated?
It's a mixture. It's a mixture. But some...
Is it 50-50 or mostly state, or?
In the end, New Hampshire takes an approach where we'll let you figure it out on a local level. The federal government's more like, these are the things you need to have, and they have a lot of authority behind them.
If you want our money.
If you want our money,
correct.
But a good example.
Strings attached.
But there's some good mandates that come out, like some of the stuff around civics. It's been great. Like, we should make sure that all of our kids, when they graduate, understand civics really, really well.
And back to the management part on, Dan's got his end, we've got our end. We're a pretty diverse school board. We have our strengths in a lot of areas, which I think is important for a community to understand, is having a vested school board throughout the district really helps the superintendent, move the district forward. And I feel as though the last couple of years, the stability of the school board and the strengths in certain areas, all of us are vested in every part of it.
Absolutely.
We have our strengths, 2 of us will work on this project, or 2 others will meet with the superintendent or meet in this this school and discuss with personnel, how can we do this? And then we all collaborate at the end and come up with a solution to move the district forward in every way, whether it's financial, whether it's curriculum, whether it's special education. And I think you'll see that meeting after meeting that it's that they're all sincere to making education the best it can be and give our superintendent and staff the ability to do that. And not without heavy question, heavy resource, heavy information, but I think this board and the past couple of years board have really jumped in and rolled up their sleeves, which you don't find a lot. And it's made I think a huge difference for the superintendent to be able to go and do things that we're showing other districts we can do in Londonderry that maybe haven't been done in some time, but is moving this district forward in a good way. So,
You know, I mean, when it comes to schools, you guys are on the ballot. You know, Dan's not on the ballot. Others, the teachers aren't on the ballot. The principals aren't on the ballot.
Yeah.
You guys are on the ballot, and sometimes there's a frustration if things aren't going the way you want, and you know this better than I.
Sure.
You know, school board needs to do this, or why isn't this happening? And
Yep.
I don't know if you can delineate a little more about what you can and can't do, because
Yeah.
it's not as easy as some people want it to believe it is. You know?
No, and we are elected by, the community, the taxpayers, community members, and we answer to them. There's 5 of us, we all have equal power. I may be the chairman, I run the meetings, I set the agenda with the superintendent and my other colleagues, anything they would like on the agenda. And that's basically what the chairman's job is, to sign some paperwork, but to collaborate with the other 4 members and share information and make sure the meetings are run, in a business-like manner, and make sure emails get answered. And one thing I took upon myself is if an email comes in and another member is better suited to answer that email to a parent or concerned person, I will ask if they would like to get back to that
Good
person.
idea.
And
Good
that I've done it several times over the last year. And then I will collaborate with Dan if it should be in his hands. And we have the communication committee was developed a couple years ago, which has made a tremendous difference. And a couple board members are on that committee as well and engaged. And we came up with the flow chart, and it's right on the website. And we don't want to be the micromanagers. We're like the board of directors of a corporation, and everything comes to us through the superintendent. He's our only employee. He runs the district. And we're able to do that with good leadership and see the results and question. That's what we have our school board meetings for the superintendent to report to us what's happened, what's coming up, policy changes. We set policy. We are to make sure the superintendent and staff follow policy. That is our role.
When you say he's the only employee, how many employees in the school district,
We have about
district-wide?
720.
Yeah.
About 350 are teachers. And then you get to your support staff, your custodians, and all the layers kind of after that.
Yeah.
That's a large voting block right
Yeah,
there.
that's true. That's true.
It is.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask a different question, because the school system nationwide has gotten away from this for many years, and that's the trades.
Yeah.
What can we do here?
So-
We need
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
put trades back into our school curriculum, because, as you know, not everybody is suited to go to college, nor should they.
Yep.
Everyone, and you can make a lot more money in a lot of cases by doing the trades, but the trades have escaped us.
Yeah.
We need to do that. We need to do better.
glad.
How do we do that? How do we get it in here?
Good.
Where do we have to start?
Great news is we have some answers coming.
Yeah.
So right now the way we function is our students will either go to Hudson or Manchester for CTE career centers. But we've had a lot of discussion over the last year about how can we do more, this exact question. So we're coming up as part of our new strategic plan, what can we do more? How can we build stuff more in-house? I don't want to preset some answers, but I look at the fire station right next door. I see the high school right here. Why can't we come up with a great program to get kids on that path? Or even the police. So there's a lot of opportunities that we can do more of. It's just the way the state has kind of organized it, we've tended to send kids out. So we're having more conversation of the last year of what can we do more internally and also send kids out. But there's also lots of opportunities where maybe we can send some of our seniors to some of the community colleges too, and really get them into some of these more advanced programs. So we see that, I think, over the last 10 to 15 years for sure is we've been so college focused, we've lost that a little bit.
Yep.
And we need to better map out for our parents and our kids from grades 6 through 12, you have this big decision you're going to make at 18. What can we do to help you get ready for that? So we're working on that now, and I think by probably this time next year, we'll have things a lot more fleshed out.
Are there any obstacles at the state level in terms of policies that could help facilitate that, things that we need to know about?
There's a lot of local control, so I think if we come up with good ideas, we have the ability to get there. It's just layering on what we already do with Hudson and Manchester we have to kind of think about.
Yeah. And as Dan said earlier, we've talked to several individuals that have set up CTE programs in-house, and we added $30,000 to the budget to increase for more students to be able to go out of district this year to either Alvern or Manchester or another district if we open up.
Doesn't Pinkerton have a pretty good vocational
They
technical?
do.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. They're another one.
That's where actually I went when,
Yeah.
when Londonderry didn't have a high school.
Yes,
That's where I went.
yeah.
So.
A few of our kids go there, but I think one of the options for us is, can more of our kids go there? 'Cause
That's
it is a
correct.
very strong program,
Yeah, and we've had metals class and wood class for years. That's basically what we've still got here at the high school. We want to open that avenue. We want to make sure every student has that ability, because as we see, enrollment in the four-year colleges has declined.
Yep.
Yes.
It was just a big thing in the paper this weekend.
There's and there's so many people have gone to college, spent hundreds of
Yeah,
thousands of
that's the problem,
dollars to get a
yes.
degree
Yeah.
that doesn't pay anything,
Yep.
which is a big problem.
Yep.
Electricians, plumbers, masonries, carpenters, they can make a lot more money.
They can.
You have to work.
Yes.
But the demand is there, I
Yep.
know.
Yep.
Try hiring one these days,
Sure.
Yeah.
The demand is there, and it's not only a noble profession, it's a necessary
Yep.
profession.
It is.
We
Yeah.
need, and the kids need to be informed
Yep.
of choices.
Yeah.
That is, in the past, they shied away from it, but now we should educate them and tell them that this is a
Yep.
good profession.
Yep.
You have to work,
Yeah.
obviously, but there's pride in doing something that you can see the finished product in.
That's correct. That's correct.
Really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask one more question. Time's running short. Give us a brief rundown. I know you advocated for this the last town election. It didn't go over very well. What's the story behind this kindergarten program? The $35 million
Sure.
bond. That's a lot of money for this town.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
And I think in the end, that's why it didn't pass. It got strong support, but not enough support. So I think we're actively right now looking at enrollment, looking at all of our options, and trying to find a much smaller way forward. Because we want full day kindergarten for our kids, but that price tag was probably too big.
Yeah. And we're just at the last meeting last Tuesday, brought up some scenarios. The superintendent brought, a three option. We can go this route, this route, this route. Another option is there property available? And there wasn't at this time last year or the year before that I looked pursuing was another piece of property or a building that could house some of our education programs, whatever it may be. But there was one property available now that we're diving into to see if it's a possibility, and had asked the superintendent and his staff to come back to us in the next meeting with some information, and probably take another month after that. So we're looking at reducing the cost, even if we have to move some of the education programs where commercial property has opened up over the past couple of years. And that, can we get into something that's more economical for our taxpayers, bring that cost down, but yet still be able to have that option for full day kindergarten, make sure our K through 3 and 4 and services have the room they need to effectively do what they're supposed to do for the students. That was the main concern, was the space needs as well as full day kindergarten. And you're right, Doug, I mean, the cost was high. Yeah. We looked at all the options at that point, but times have changed. And there's other opportunities out there that we're pursuing right now to see if we can do it in a different fashion. And we're going to continually, that's what's good about this school board and leadership now, is we're continually looking to keep the cost down at all possible. And that's what we're going to do moving forward, is just look at every option available. So stay tuned for that.
And one thing I'd add is inflation really hurt us. So back in 2017 and 18, when some of these first ideas came up, when Governor Sununu kind of led the charge, let's get full-day kindergarten, we were looking at it like maybe a $9 to $11 million option.
Right.
The building we put forward wasn't that different than that one 5 years ago, but inflation just went through the roof. So I think we're hoping to find something more towards that magnitude, if possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're into our final closing comments here. I want to thank you, Dan and Bob, for coming here.
Sure.
And I'd like to offer the next minute for closing comments. Any last thing you want to get out to our public here when they view the show that you'd like to tell them? And Wayne, you can have some. You can have the last word.
Oh, okay. You want me to start, or do you want them?
Oh, go ahead.
Want to go first?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having us. It's always good to get more information about what's going on in our schools. As I stated, on behalf of the school board, we work for the community. That's who we listen to them all. We try to get information back to them, point them in the right direction. You figure we have 4,000 students, approximately 8,000 parents alone that we're there to service because they're the ones that elected us. And hopefully we're doing the right thing. We're not always going to be correct or agree on certain things, but I think in the long run, if we can come to a solution for what's best for the student at that time, that's what this board is about. And giving the resources and explaining to the community why we need certain things so the superintendent and the school district can operate at a high level. I think all of our goal is to have Londonderry as the best school district in the state. I know that was one of the reasons I ran, 5 years ago, and are still here today, is to get the education level to the highest capability as possible. We still got a long way to go, but we're making great strides, and we're seeing it month after month in the buildings, and we hope to continue that. So I'm feeling good about where the district is and where it's headed. So.
I think I'd just add, I want to thank the community and the parents for their support. I mean, we're closing another school year at the end of this week, and we felt nothing but support and attention and the ability to help all of our students get to a better place, and it's made a huge difference. We've made a lot of strides in the last couple of years.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. Actually, I don't know when this is going to air, so thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
And thank you for your service to Londonderry.
Thank you.
Talking about inflation, this will be my closing comment. We you mentioned it here at the local level, and it's affecting us everywhere. Obviously, it is everywhere. It's almost like the pandemic in a sense. At least you don't have to worry about the medical side of it, at least.
Yeah.
Although the medical costs are going up. But we were talking earlier before the show began about inflation, and county budget just went up $6 million. So it's everywhere, and unfortunately, hopefully that's something that's going to be reversed and contained, because it is a problem. So.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to a conclusion to the latest episode of Concord Conversations. Thank you, Londonderry, for watching, and be well this summertime, and keep looking for our next episode coming up. Thank you.
Take care.
The preceding program was produced by Londonderry residents. The views and opinions expressed are not necessarily the views and opinions of the LACTV staff or its volunteers, and should not be considered an endorsement by CTV 20 or its staff and volunteers.